What happens when one of Britain's most beloved actors sits down for what should be a simple chat about his latest film, only to face a barrage of personal attacks that cross every line of decency? It only took one shockingly invasive comment about his private life to ignite a confrontation so explosive that Colin Firth walked off the set, leaving Lorraine Kelly speechless and her panel in complete chaos. The morning started off normally enough. Colin Firth had been booked on the Lorraine Kelly show to promote his new period drama, a film that had already been generating serious awards buzz. He arrived at the studio calm and composed, exactly as you would expect from someone of his stature. The audience settled into their seats, cameras were positioned, and Lorraine sat behind her desk with that signature smile she always wore. Sitting alongside Lorraine that morning were two regular panelists. There was Amanda Ross, the show's entertainment correspondent who usually covered celebrity gossip, and David Chen, a lifestyle contributor known for his sometimes controversial hot takes. Both of them seemed excited to have such a distinguished guest on the show. Colin walked onto the set to polite applause. He shook hands with Lorraine, gave a small wave to Amanda and David, and took his seat in the guest chair. Everything seemed perfectly fine at first. Lorraine started with what appeared to be a standard opening. "Colin, absolutely lovely to have you here this morning. Now, you have got this new film coming out, and everyone is talking about your performance. Tell us a little bit about it." Colin smiled warmly. "Well, thank you for having me. Yes, the film is a period piece set in the 1800s. It is a rather intimate character study about a man dealing with loss and finding purpose again. We shot it over about 3 months last year, primarily on location in the English countryside, and I am really quite proud of what we have created." The director brought such a unique vision to the material. Lorraine nodded, but there was something in her expression that felt off, a certain sharpness behind the smile. Intimate character study, you say, about loss. Now, that is interesting because you have had some experiences with loss yourself, have you not? Personal experiences that perhaps informed this role? I mean, we all go through difficult times, but for someone in the public eye, it must be particularly challenging. Colin's smile faltered slightly. He had not expected such a personal turn quite so soon. "Well, I mean, everyone experiences loss at some point. It is part of being human, part of the journey we all take. But I prefer to keep my personal life separate from my work. I think the performance should stand on its own merit." "Oh, come on now," Lorraine pressed, leaning forward with what seemed like genuine curiosity, but carried an edge. "You cannot expect to play these deep, emotional roles and not draw from your own life. Our viewers want to know the real Colin Firth, not just the actor. They want to understand what makes you tick, what drives those incredible performances we see on screen." Amanda jumped in, sensing the slight tension beginning to build in the studio. "The film does look beautiful from the trailer we watched earlier. The cinematography is absolutely stunning. That scene in the garden, with the morning light filtering through the trees, it was just breathtaking. Who was your director of photography on this project, Colin?" But Lorraine was not interested in changing direction. She barely glanced at Amanda, her attention fixed firmly on Colin. "We will get to all of that technical stuff in a moment, Amanda. Colin, I think it is fascinating how actors like yourself use real pain, real experiences to fuel your performances. You have been married for quite some time now. That must come with its own challenges, especially in your industry where temptation is everywhere, where you are working closely with beautiful co-stars in intimate scenes." Colin shifted in his seat, his discomfort becoming more evident. "I am not really here to discuss my marriage, Lorraine. I thought we were going to talk about the film and the creative choices that went into making it." "We are talking about the film," Lorraine said with a light laugh that did not quite reach her eyes. There was something almost predatory in the way she was pursuing this line of questioning. "I am just trying to understand where your emotional depth comes from, where you draw that vulnerability from. You must admit, there have been rumors over the years. Whispers about troubles at home, about difficulties in your personal relationships. Surely some of that must find its way into your work. The audience had gone quiet. You could hear the discomfort settling over the studio like a heavy blanket. David looked uncomfortable, glancing between Colin and Lorraine with growing concern. Amanda's smile had frozen on her face, her eyes darting nervously. Colin's voice remained steady, but you could hear the edge creeping in, a firmness that had not been there before. I really do not appreciate that line of questioning. My private life is private, and I would appreciate it if we could stick to discussing the film I am here to promote. There is plenty to talk about regarding the production, the historical context, the themes we explored. Lorraine waved her hand dismissively, as if swatting away his concerns like an annoying fly. Oh, do not be so sensitive. This is morning television, Colin. People want the real conversations, not just some sanitized press release material churned out by your publicist. Besides, you knew what you were signing up for when you agreed to come on this show. We are known for getting to the heart of matters. Actually, Colin said, his jaw tightening visibly, I was told this would be a respectful conversation about my work, not an interrogation about my personal relationships. There is a significant difference between the two, and I think you know that. Interrogation? Lorraine laughed sharply. That's a bit dramatic, is it not? I'm simply asking questions that our viewers are curious about. You are a public figure, Colin. You do not get to pick and choose what people ask about. Amanda tried again to intervene. Lorraine, maybe we should show that clip from the film. I think everyone would love to see it. In a moment, Amanda, Lorraine said curtly, not even looking at her colleague. She kept her focus locked on Colin. What I find interesting, Colin, is how you actors always want the publicity, the magazine covers, the attention when it suits you. But the moment someone asks a real question, suddenly you are all about privacy. Colin sat up straighter. There is a difference between publicity for my work and invasive questions about my marriage. Surely you can understand that distinction. What I understand, Lorraine said, her voice taking on a sharper tone, is that you seem to think you are above the normal give and take of a talk show. You come on here expecting us to just fawn over your latest project, but you do not want to actually engage. That strikes me as rather entitled, if I am being honest. David finally spoke up, his voice uncertain. I think maybe Colin has a point here, Lorraine. The film really does look excellent, and perhaps we should focus on that. Lorraine shot David a look that could freeze water. Thank you, David, but I am perfectly capable of conducting my own interview. Colin, let me ask you this. Do you think you are more important than the other guests who come on this show? Because they answer questions about their personal lives all the time. Colin's composure was clearly being tested. I do not think I am more important than anyone else. What I think is that I deserve the same basic respect that any guest should receive, and that includes not having my marriage dissected on live television. Respect? Lorraine repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You want to talk about respect? I have been hosting this show for years. Years. I have interviewed hundreds of celebrities, many far more famous than you, and never once have I had someone sit here and tell me I am being disrespectful for doing my job. Your job, Colin said slowly, is supposed to be having conversations with guests, not attacking them. The atmosphere in the studio had become incredibly tense. Crew members were exchanging worried glances. The audience sat in stunned silence. Amanda looked like she wanted to disappear. Lorraine's face had flushed red. Attacking you? I have asked you perfectly reasonable questions, and you are sitting there acting like some sort of victim. Honestly, the arrogance is quite remarkable. I am not acting like a victim, Colin replied, his voice rising slightly for the first time. I am simply trying to maintain some boundaries, which apparently is too much to ask. Boundaries, Lorraine scoffed. You want boundaries? Then perhaps you should not be in the public eye. Perhaps you should not be an actor at all if you cannot handle a few simple questions. Colin stared at her in disbelief. Are you seriously suggesting I should quit my career because I will not discuss my private life on your show? I am suggesting, Lorraine said, leaning back in her chair with an air of superiority, that you need to understand how this industry works. You do not get to have it both ways. You do not get to enjoy all the benefits of fame and then cry about privacy when it is convenient for you. Amanda made one more attempt to salvage the situation. You know what? Why do we not take a quick break? We could all just reset and come back to this fresh. We are not taking a break, Lorraine snapped. We are in the middle of a conversation here, Amanda. Stay out of it. Amanda recoiled as if she had been slapped. David put his hand on her arm in a gesture of support, but he kept quiet, clearly not wanting to draw Lorraine's fire. Colin looked at Amanda with sympathy before turning his attention back to Lorraine. You know what I find truly remarkable? Your complete lack of self-awareness. You sit there accusing me of arrogance while you are treating your own colleagues terribly right in front of everyone. Do not presume to lecture me about how I run my show, Lorraine fired back. Amanda and David understand how things work here. They know their roles. You are the one coming in here with your precious sensibilities, expecting special treatment. Special treatment? Colin's voice was incredulous now. Asking not to have my personal life picked apart is special treatment? What kind of show are you running here? A successful one, Lorraine shot back. One that people actually want to watch because we have real conversations, not the kind of boring, safe nonsense you apparently prefer. Colin shook, his head slowly. Real conversations are built on mutual respect. What you are doing right now is not a conversation. It is an ambush. You are trying to provoke me, to get some kind of dramatic moment for your ratings. Oh, please, Lorraine said with a bitter laugh. Do not flatter yourself. We do not need you for ratings. If anything, you should be grateful we even invited you on. There are plenty of other actors who would love this opportunity. Then perhaps you should have invited one of them, Colin said quietly, and for the first time, there was something dangerous in his calm tone. Lorraine seemed to sense she was losing control of the situation, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. You know what your problem is, Colin. You have spent so long playing these dignified characters in your little films that you actually think you are better than everyone else. You think you can just waltz in here and dictate the terms of the conversation. That is not what I think. At all, Colin replied. What I think is that you are a bully who is used to pushing people around because you have a television show and a platform. And I think you are threatened by anyone who does not just roll over and let you do whatever you want. The word bully hung in the air like a thunderclap. Lorraine's expression shifted from anger to something darker. How dare you, she said in a low voice. How dare you come onto my show and call me a bully? I'm calling it as I see it, Colin said, standing his ground. You have been hostile from the moment I sat down. You dismissed your colleagues when they tried to help. You have been trying to humiliate me for not playing along with your agenda. What else would you call that behavior? David finally found his courage. Lorraine, I really think we need to take a step back here. This has gotten out of hand. You can be quiet, David, Lorraine said without looking at him. This is between me and our guest, who apparently thinks he can come on national television and insult me. I am not insulting you, Colin said firmly. I am defending myself against your attacks. There is a difference. Attacks? Lorraine stood up now, her voice getting louder. You want to talk about attacks? You sit there in your expensive suit, with your fancy accent and your Oscar nominations, and you have the nerve to lecture me about how to do my job? I have been working in this industry since before you were even famous. Then perhaps you should have learned some professionalism in all that time, Colin replied, and now he stood up as well. Because right now, you are acting like someone who cannot handle being told no. The studio was electric with tension. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment. The audience was completely silent, watching this meltdown unfold in real time. Lorraine's voice turned icy. "You need to sit back down and finish this interview." "Actually," Colin said calmly, "I do not need to do anything. This interview is over." "Excuse me?" Lorraine looked genuinely shocked. "You heard me," Colin said, starting to remove his microphone. "I am not going to sit here and be berated by someone who clearly has no interest in a genuine conversation. I came here in good faith to talk about my work, and you have turned this into some kind of circus." Amanda spoke up, her voice tentative but hopeful. "Colin, please. Maybe if we just all calm down for a moment, take a breath, we can restart this conversation on a better footing. I really think the film deserves to be properly discussed." "Amanda, you have been trying to help this whole time, and she has shut you down at every turn," Colin said gently, his voice softening when he addressed her. "I appreciate your efforts, I really do, but I am done here. I will not continue to participate in this." Lorraine stepped forward, her face red with fury, her hands clenched at her sides. "If you walk off this set, you will regret it. Do you have any idea what kind of damage this will do to your reputation? Walking out of an interview like some kind of spoiled diva who cannot handle a few hard questions?" Colin paused and looked at her directly, meeting her gaze without flinching. "My reputation will survive me standing up for myself. I have built a career on integrity and respect for my craft. I am not sure the same can be said for yours after people see how you have behaved today. After they see how you treat your guests and your own colleagues." "Is that a threat?" Lorraine demanded, her voice sharp and accusatory. "It is an observation," Colin replied calmly. "Everyone here has witnessed what happened. Every member of this audience, every crew member, every person watching at home. The cameras caught all of it, every word, every expression. People will make their own judgments about who was reasonable and who was not." "You arrogant," Lorraine started, but Colin cut her off. "I am many things, Lorraine, but arrogant is not one of them. What I am is someone who knows when to walk away from a toxic situation. Someone who knows that no amount of publicity is worth compromising basic human dignity. And this most certainly qualifies as toxic." He finished removing his microphone and handed it to a nearby crew member, who took it with shaking hands, clearly terrified of the situation unfolding before them. The crew looked absolutely terrified, caught between their guest and their boss, unsure of what to do or say. Lorraine was practically vibrating with anger now, her professional veneer completely shattered. "Fine, walk out. Run away like a coward because you cannot handle a tough interview. Because you are too precious, too important to answer honest questions." Colin turned back to face her one last time, his expression calm but resolute. A tough interview would be challenging questions about my craft, about my choices as an actor, about the themes and messages of the film, about the technical challenges we faced during production. What you did today was try to exploit my personal life for entertainment, to pry into my marriage for ratings. Those are very different things, and the fact that you cannot tell the difference is deeply, deeply concerning. "Get out," Lorraine said through gritted teeth, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "I am already leaving," Colin replied, his voice steady. He turned to Amanda and David, who sat frozen in their chairs. "I apologize that you both had to witness this. You both tried your best to keep things civil, to maintain some semblance of professionalism. I appreciate that more than you know." Amanda gave him a small, grateful nod, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. David looked like he wanted to say something, but stayed silent, probably worried about his job security, probably afraid of becoming Lorraine's next target. Colin began walking toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the silent studio. Lorraine called after him, unable to let it go, unable to accept what was happening. "You are making a huge mistake. You will never work with this network again. I will make absolutely sure of that. I have that power." Colin stopped, but did not turn around. "If that is the price of maintaining my dignity, then so be it." "Dignity?" Lorraine laughed harshly. You are walking off a live television show. Where is dignity in that? Now Colin did turn around, and his voice was quiet, but absolutely firm. The dignity is in knowing when to remove yourself from a situation where you are not being treated with basic human decency. The dignity is in refusing to participate in your attempt to turn my personal life into a spectacle. The dignity is in standing up for myself instead of just taking whatever you dish out because you have a television show. Lorraine opened her mouth to respond, but seemed at a loss for words. The audience was still completely silent. Amanda had tears in her eyes. David looked down at his hands. I hope, Colin said, his voice softer now, that someday you understand why this happened. I hope you realize that treating people with respect is not optional, no matter who you are or what platform you have. And I hope your colleagues here find the courage to speak up the next time you treat them the way you treated them today. With that, Colin Firth turned and walked off the set. His footsteps echoed in the silent studio. The cameras followed him all the way to the exit. He pushed open the door and disappeared, leaving behind an absolutely stunned Lorraine Kelly and a panel that looked like they had just survived a natural disaster. Lorraine stood there for a long moment, her face cycling through emotions: anger, shock, disbelief. Finally, she turned to the camera, clearly trying to salvage something from the wreckage. Well, she said, her voice shaking slightly, I suppose some people just cannot handle honest questions. We will be right back after this break. But her hands were trembling as she gripped the edge of her desk. Amanda and David sat frozen, not knowing what to say or do. The audience began to murmur among themselves, processing what they had just witnessed. The cameras finally cut away, but the damage was done. In the space of less than 20 minutes, what should have been a routine interview had turned into one of the most explosive moments in British talk show history. Colin Firth, known for his composure and professionalism, had reached his breaking point. And Lorraine Kelly, who prided herself on her charm and warmth, had shown a side of herself that millions of viewers would not soon forget. The studio remained in chaos as crew members scrambled to figure out what to do next. Amanda quietly excused herself, clearly upset. David sat there looking shell-shocked. And Lorraine, for all her bravado, could not quite hide the fact that she knew something had gone terribly, terribly wrong. The confrontation had escalated so quickly, fueled by Lorraine's refusal to respect boundaries and Colin's determination not to be bullied. Each exchange had ratcheted up the tension until there was nowhere left to go but out the door, and Colin had chosen his dignity over compliance, his self-respect over going along with a situation that had become untenable. As word spread through the building about what had happened, staff members who had not been in the studio began gathering, whispering among themselves. Everyone knew this was going to be huge. Everyone knew that the footage of this encounter would be analyzed and discussed for days, weeks, maybe even years to come. In those final moments before Colin disappeared through that door, he had made a choice that many people in his position might not have had the strength to make. He had said enough is enough. He had drawn a line. And he had walked away from a situation that had crossed every boundary of professional conduct. Lorraine, for her part, seemed unable to fully grasp what had just happened. She kept insisting to anyone who would listen that she had just been doing her job, asking the questions that viewers wanted answered. But the looks on the faces of her staff told a different story. They had seen something ugly, something that revealed a side of their host that perhaps they had suspected, but never seen quite so blatantly displayed. The incident raised questions that went beyond just this one interview. Questions about the treatment of guests on talk shows, about the line between entertainment and exploitation, about power dynamics in media, about respect and boundaries. Colin Firth had become an unlikely symbol of standing up to broadcast bullying, of refusing to be pushed around just because someone had a microphone and a camera. Amanda returned to the studio eventually, her eyes red. She took her seat next to David, and they exchanged a meaningful look. They both knew they had witnessed something significant. They both knew that their boss had crossed a line, and they both knew that staying silent about it would make them complicit. The show did eventually go back on air after the break, but the energy was completely different. Lorraine tried to carry on as if nothing had happened, moving into her next segment with forced cheerfulness. But everyone could sense the tension. Everyone knew that something had fundamentally shifted. When the show finally ended, Lorraine immediately retreated to her dressing room without speaking to anyone. The crew began packing up equipment in unusual silence. Normally, there would be chatter and jokes, but today everyone moved quietly, processing what had happened. Amanda and David met in the hallway outside the studio. "That was not okay," David said quietly. "No, it was not," Amanda agreed, "but at least Colin showed us what standing up for yourself looks like." The incident became a defining moment. The footage circulated widely, analyzed, and discussed. Most people who watched it came to the same conclusion. Colin Firth had been calm and respectful and reasonable throughout. He had tried repeatedly to redirect the conversation. He had asked for basic professional courtesy. And when that was denied, when the situation became untenable, he had made the dignified choice to remove himself. Lorraine Kelly, on the other hand, had shown a side of herself that shocked many viewers. The hostility, the dismissiveness toward her own colleagues, the refusal to respect boundaries, the personal attacks. It was a masterclass in how not to conduct an interview. In the days that followed, people continued to talk about what had happened. But for Colin, the incident was already behind him. He had made his choice in that moment, and he stood by it. Sometimes, the most important thing you can do is simply refuse to participate in something wrong. And sometimes, walking away is the bravest choice of all. The incident would become a defining moment, not just for Colin or for Lorraine, but for conversations about how guests should be treated on television programs. It would spark debates about journalistic ethics versus entertainment values, about the responsibilities of hosts, about the power imbalances inherent in the talk show format. But in that moment, in that studio, it was simply about one person deciding he had had enough, and one person who had pushed too far and could not quite believe that someone had actually pushed back. The cameras had captured it all. The audience had witnessed it all. And now, the world would see it all. Colin Firth had walked onto that set, expecting a pleasant conversation about his craft. Instead, he had found himself in a confrontation that tested his patience, his composure, and ultimately his willingness to compromise his values for the sake of publicity. He had chosen not to compromise. He had chosen himself, and in doing so, he had shown that even in an industry built on image and publicity, there are still some people who know where to draw the line.